Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase. I am your host, Chad Robert Morgan. This is the podcast for indie authors by indie authors. I myself am a multi-award-winning indie author, Chad Robert Morgan, author of such books as The Baby Eater, which is 1-4, and The Last Right Short Bites, Volume 1, Bloodlines, which is 1-2. Our latest book, Fear, is out now. So, speaking of fear, I have been working on the audiobook for forever. It has really been difficult to get this audiobook done for various reasons. A good chunk of my recordings turned out not to be good because of a bug with Audacity. If I had Audacity up and then I plugged in the microphone, it didn't connect correctly, and so it was losing all these different bands, which made it sound very tinny. So I still have something like 5 or 6 chapters I have to re-record. Finding time to record these days is really a challenge in and of itself. So I'm still working on it. But since I'm working on the audiobook, I thought one thing that I could discuss today is the tools that I personally use when I'm developing the audiobook and some of my techniques for doing that. To start with, the number one piece of software I would recommend, even though I just said that there was an issue with it and there was a bug, is Audacity. And one of the great things about Audacity is it's pretty fully featured and it's free. So if you're saying to yourself, well, I don't have money, the time to learn all these fancy, get Audacity. There's a few good ones that are affordable. Audition, if you have Adobe, like if you're already paying for the suite. Audition's also another good one. But Audacity, for a free piece of software, it is very good. One of the big things that I like using in Audacity is I use it in spectrogram mode. What that'll do is it will display your waveforms in like a heat map, right, in terms of intensity. If you are hitting something very loudly, it will show up as a bright spot. What's really nice about that is it's really useful for getting out plosives. And what I mean by plosives are things like hard P's. On my microphone, I have this windsock with the pop filter, but they still come in every once in a while. What's really nice is if you're using Audacity, you can see in the bottom if you have a plosive, because it'll just be this little nugget of just bright, almost white. And it's got a function known as spectral delete. What that'll allow you to do is in the spectrograph, you can select the area of the waveform that you want to delete. So, like for example, if there was a pop, right? If I maybe was talking, I went, like that. You could just cut that section of the audio out. But if I was talking and then maybe there was a bit like that while I was talking, you couldn't just cut that snap out because I was talking. It would cut part of my conversation out. But with the spectral delete, you can select the area of the graph that represents that snap and delete just that. It's not always that easy, but sometimes it's that easy, right? And when you're doing a plosive, you can have just this little nugget on the bottom, which is bright white. You select that area, hit delete, and that is really handy for killing hard P's and hard B's and everything like that in your audio. So it's a very useful tool, especially for something that's free. Technically, that really is the only tool you need. It has a full functioning suite of tools, including help to normalize your audio, which we'll talk to you about a bit, for denoising, which technically I haven't used, but it does have that feature in there. But what I do is when I record my initial audio, and then when I'm recording, I will take multiple takes, right? So if I have a chapter, the chapter is going to be about 30 minutes. I'm going to have an hour-long audio clip to edit. Part of that reason is sometimes you don't hear it when you say it, that you might say something wrong. And you might need to pull from another take, You might be listening to it. It's like, oh man, that take was fine, but the refrigerator back here kicked on and made a noise, right? So it's really handy to have duplicates of your lines just in case take one got screwed up or something like that. So once I go through my initial edit in Audacity and I export that out as a wave, also keep in mind at this point we need to keep everything as a 32-bit floating point. The reason for that is if you are spiking your audio, the 32-bit can allow you to bring that back down without losing the quality of the audio. Okay, if you're saving it out as 8-bit fix kind of thing, and you have a spike, you're kind of screwed at that point. With floating point, you can repair that. So keep everything at 32-bit floating point for as long as you can. Okay, so I export that out as 32-bit floating point. Then I will bring that into Pro Tools. Now, why do I use Pro Tools? First of all, when I first started getting into audio engineering, and I'm not an audio engineer by any stretch of the imagination. Don't get me wrong, but when I first started getting into dialogue editing and cutting things up for my personal projects, a software engineer I did work with at my day job came here and helped get me set up and showed me how to use Pro Tools and everything like that. And all the recording sessions that we had done was in Pro Tools, so we needed to stay in Pro Tools. And back in the day, Pro Tools was expensive. Pro Tools is still expensive, to be honest. But there is a free version of Pro Tools called Pro Tools First. It is pretty limited, but if you're talking audiobook stuff, it's probably more than you need already. Chances are any of the stuff that you want it to do that it's not doing, well, let me rephrase that. Chances are there isn't anything in Pro Tools First that you would want to do if you're just editing audiobooks like or podcasts or things like that. It is more than sufficient for that kind of stuff. And again, it's free. So when I run it through Pro Tools, I'll do a few things. Like I'll run it through a graphic equalizer to help pull out plosives, to give my voice just a hint more bass. I'll run a de-esser. So when you're essing, it kind of pulls that, out of the S sound. Then one of the big things that I do is I run it through a vocal leveler, right? And again, you can do this in Audition a couple different ways. But what's really nice with Pro Tools is I can really dial in and see what I'm doing in terms of how much am I raising the gain, and then you run it through a curve that says, okay, when you're at this level, raise it like say 7 decibels or whatever. But then as you start getting higher and higher, we can level it out so we're not raising all the dialogue to the same level, right? If it's quiet, it raises it up. If it's already loud, it tries to keep it the same level. And this is really important for 2 reasons. One, you do not want your audio to clip, right? You don't want to crank it so high that it's basically blowing out your speakers kind of thing, right? Because it's just going to sound bad. Secondly, Audible has a very hard limit of -3 decibels. That is your ceiling, right? So what I will do is after I do the leveler and I try to keep the high end down, I will run it through another limiter that basically tries to lower anything that is past about 0.3. Depends on how soft of a transition you are. If it's a softer transition, then maybe not 0.3 but -3. Sometimes I'll lower it to -5 and give it a little bit of a softer bleed in kind of thing. But anyway, but that's really important to keep your max peak at -3 decibels. And if you've never done any audio recording, at 0 is max, right? So everything is in negative value. Like I'm sitting here right now doing the recording. I can see my voice in the meter. I can see how loud I am. When I'm at about -20, it's the yellow zone, and then anywhere around -7 is considered in the red, right? So definitely want to make sure that we're crushing things below -3, but crushing it in a way that it still sounds good. Once I port that out of Pro Tools, my third and final step is to bring it through iZotope. Now, as I said, things like Audition and Audacity already have functions to do this, but what's really nice, I'm just really used to using iZotope and get really good results from it. This is the one piece of software I do pay for, and it wasn't that expensive. I forget how much it is. I can probably look it up real quick. Yeah, so it was maybe about $300 or $400. I don't remember paying that much for it. You can also save some money if you get it as a plugin. Actually, when I buy it and I install it, it actually shows up in Audacity. But what's really nice is I bring the file up, and then I can run an auto repair assistant, which analyzes the audio and says, okay, well, you got clicks, let's remove those. It'll tell me if I'm clipping. If I'm clipping, I don't like how it solves clipping. So if I'm clipping, I'll go back to Pro Tools and I'll reduce my gain in my voice level or tweak with the values to make sure that it comes out as clear as possible. I don't want to introduce clipping while I'm processing the audio. But it's also got a really nice feature for background removal. So right now I'm talking here, I got the refrigerator going, I got the hums of the computers. You're going to hear all this in the podcast. But what I would do and I'm going to leave it in to illustrate the point, but what I would do is I would actually export the audio out, and then I would take a section where I'm not talking, it's just background noise, and then I would tell iZotope remove that, and it pulls it out of the audio, which is really nice. Now you still want to have room tone, so you don't want to like really crank it up to where it's, but you can dial that down so the background noise is way more manageable. And that has been a huge saver for me, especially these days. I usually record on my laptop. Again, I'm not doing that now because I want to be on my PC to, reasons. But usually I've gotten to where I'm recording on my laptop because my laptop is quieter and I get less background noise, and then I don't have to go through and remove it as aggressively. Once you get that done, convert it to MP3. Again, Audacity can do that for you. Pro Tools can do that for you. A few other programs. And then you're ready to upload to ACX. I'm not going to go too much into where you can publish your audiobooks, just because I haven't really run the gamut. I know Findaway Voices is really good because that'll put it pretty much like everywhere, including Audible. Audible is like the place to get your audiobook done because everybody is going to be using Audible. Last time I checked, it was like something like 2/3 of audiobook users were using Audible, or more. So Findaway Voices works. I usually put things up on ACX, which is Amazon, which is Audible. When you do that, they will give you promo codes. Findaway Voices will also give you promo codes. So either way works. If you're looking for mass distribution, you can try Findaway Voices. Again, what I would recommend is start with Audible. Get those promo codes, get it out there, then take it off as an exclusive when you've used up your promo codes. Once you take it off the exclusive, you lose those promo codes. So burn all those up first. Then take it off exclusive, and they'll warn you. It's like, well, you're going to lose all of your royalties. Your royalties are going to drop from 50% to something like 20% or something like that. But then you can put it on Findaway Voices. I would do that once your audiobook sales start dropping, right? If you get the promo codes out, you've had the book up there for a while, you haven't seen really a lot of sales on your audiobook in about a few months, that's a good time to take it off, and then you can put it on Findaway, which will put it on more markets. And that way you don't have to worry about losing that additional royalties because the book kind of stopped selling after a while. You know what I'm saying? So that to me always seems like a good way to kind of game the system a little bit. And then once you're on Findaway, they'll give you a bunch of promo codes for Spotify, so you get to start that all over again. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. That's my recommendation. Other people might have different ideas. In fact, if you have any recommendations, please leave me comments. I do actually occasionally get comments. The other day I was talking about how we were checking out this Terror Trader event in near Phoenix, and how I thought that that was about the only horror convention out there. Does turn one of the viewers caught one of the clips that I put on Instagram or whatever, and was like, hey, no, there's actually Mad Monster Party, which I just learned about at Monsterpalooza, and there was also Day of the Dead, which actually I think travels, right? Because I think there's like chapters of that everywhere. I've seen that pop up a few times. And Phoenix also has its own Comic-Con that it's starting, or has started. I don't know how long it's been there, to be honest, but so there's more going on in Phoenix than I first thought of. And again, thank you, audience members, for pointing that out and commenting on that, because then again, this is what we're supposed to do. This community is supposed to help each other. I am not some omnipotent being. Trust me, my kids will totally wrap me out on that one. I do not know everything. In fact, some people would say I know next to nothing. The idea is to start conversations and to share ideas, not just to have me blather on. Because, yeah, it's empty up here. There's nothing in there. So with that said, let's go ahead and go to this week's review. So I met these guys. Technically, I met this guy because I think he was by himself at the time. I think he was the head of this Bad Cat Publishing, and they were at the Pasadena Comic-Con, which again had been moved to May. Typically, it's in January. And there was a lot of indie authors at that, and a lot of them I already knew. I would say I'm hoping that if I do it again in January, it's a little bit busier, because maybe it was because it was rescheduled, maybe because May was a busy month, I don't know. But I thought it was a bit slow. I thought a lot of people thought that too. But Pasadena Comic-Con, however, was the debut of Bad Cat Publishing and their first comic book, The Kraken. So the bad thing about reviewing comic books, as I've mentioned before, is that you are getting a slice of the story. Very rarely is a beginning, middle, and end with the first few issues that you get, right? That's the point of comic books, is they are supposed to go on forever. That's why I have something like 15 volumes of The Walking Dead. With that said, I did think it was a very interesting premise. So what's happening is this helicopter is transporting prisoners, and it goes down, and they have to land on this ship, only it's not a ship. I'm not entirely sure if it's a derelict that was absorbed by this organism, or the ship itself is the organism, like it formed that way as a kind of camouflage. The comic book kind of suggests that's the case, because there's times when like doors would disappear and everything like that. So it does kind of suggest that the ship itself was never a ship, right? It's just this weird giant organism that has evolved to look like a ship to lure in prey. Um, so yeah, and they're fighting the ship. So it's only 3 issues so far that I got. Um, I thought it was excellent. The one critique I would have is that, especially with the military people on the copter, a lot of the, since they're in uniform, um, with the dark art style, it was a little hard to differentiate between the characters visually. Um, and again, if you're in uniform is supposed to make you look the same. That's sort of the point of a uniform. That's why the GI Joe figures all have these really crazy outfits, because you got to be able to tell them apart. No military looks like that. They all wear the same clothes. That's the point. That's why it's called a uniform, because they look uniform. Um, but the art style was really nice. I mean, it was really dark, gritty, um, a lot of sharp lines and harsh tones, which really kind of increased the ominence of these creatures that are attacking these survivors and everything like that. So, very good artwork, very good book, very good story. Again, it's only 3 issues. I wish I had more to dig into so I can have more to chew on this book. But what the little snippet that I got is excellent. So I would definitely keep an eye on that one and see how that story progresses. So that's about it for this week. I know this is kind of a short podcast, but again, I'm still healing up from my injuries at Monsterpalooza. My lip is still a bit swollen over here. It feels like I got little rocks buried in my lip. My leg is getting better. Thank you all for the well wishes. And for the one person that asked when the plastic surgeon stitched up my lip, why did he stop? Could he have just kept working? Fuck you. It was kind of traumatizing. I'll be honest with you. We will be at Hauntmare Expo at the end of July. It's like 27th, 28th, I believe it is. Is that right? Let me see. Do 26th and 27th. I was close. The 26th and 27th in the Fresno Fairgrounds. I just was told of a really nice one to sign up for next year, which I currently don't have the money to do, to be honest. And it's not expensive. It's not them, it's me. But Big Texas Terror, I need to see if I can scrape up some booth fees so I can sign up for that for next year. Our friends over at Sex and Horror Podcast recommended that one to us. So definitely want to try to get that one on my to-do list for next year. September, we will be at... Oh, this is actually a good point. September, we will be at Creep IE Aftermath. No, I've mentioned this before. Use promo code Spectral for your one-day tickets. I will say that one-day tickets are probably going to sell a lot more than they have previously. That was actually something I didn't talk about last week when I was talking about Monsterpalooza. I did have a chance to talk to Elliot, who runs the Monsterpalooza. Great guy. And I was telling him, I said, I'm pleasantly surprised. A lot of the other vendors are pleasantly surprised. We are very busy. We are getting a lot of crowds, and I was afraid that the crowds would not be there. No fault to them, just because of the economy and the fact that the areas around Pasadena have been decimated with the wildfires and everything like that. And he confessed to me that they were seeing a lot of ticket sales, but they were seeing a shift in the ticket sales. So people were no longer buying 3-day tickets for the entire event. So the multi-day sales were dropping, but the single days were jumping up. So people still wanted to come to the convention, but they were being a little bit more prudent with their money and picking what days they wanted to come, as opposed to buying a ticket that allowed them free access for the entire event. So when point of that story is in September we have Creep IE Aftermath, and you use promo code Spectral to get a discount for your single day pass. And they're quite clear that the promo doesn't work for VIP or multi-day passes. I'm thinking if what happened with Monsterpalooza happens with Creep IE, we're not going to see a lot of these multi-day passes being sold. Again, people being hit by the economy. They still want to go see their horror conventions. They want to meet their celebrities, but they're going to be a little bit more choosy about what day they go instead of going the entire weekend. So that makes that promo code a little bit more valuable, because that's going to be the ticket I think is going to sell even more than usual. So please, if you're going to go to Creep IE, use promo code Spectral. The one vendor whose promo code is used the most gets a free booth next year. Please, I need the win at this point. All the money I earned at Monsterpalooza got sucked up in medical bills at this point. It all went away. So help the podcast, help Spectral Ink Productions, which is me, help a struggling indie author. Use that promo code and come visit us at Creep IE. Also remember, nobody has called me on this. But if you follow the podcast, if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, or hell, if you follow me on MySpace, I don't care what social media it is, right? Come by the booth, show me that you follow me. Say, hey, look, here's you on Twitter, right? Here's you on Blue Sky. I follow you. Discount at the booth. You can buy a book or T-shirt or whatever you need, and you get an additional discount because you follow me on social media. So use promo code Spectral for your discount ticket at Creep IE. Show me that you follow me on social media at any convention, and you'll get an additional discount at my booth, my products. Sound good? So that's it for right now. I think that covers everything. So until then, come see us at Hotmare Expo and keep on reading.